So we're dealing with one of the tragedies of war, and specifically the loss of limbs in war. Limbs that have, as you said, have been left behind in the battle, and because of advancements in medicine, we're able to save these men and women. This exhibit, when it's seen by the public, will represent in total the figure 748, and I hope that it will come alive in terms of just the mass of limbs that have been left behind in Iraq and Afghanistan, which we just never see as the general public in terms of what the price of war that's been paid. Well, I take the mannequin limbs, which are fiberglass, and in order to cast them, I first have to wrap each one with a very thin sheet of plastic, and that's the barrier between the plaster and the model. We're using a plaster gauze that people would recognize if they've ever had a cast made for them in a hospital, or if they've ever seen a cast. It's a series of wrappings, and then from there we actually physically push the plaster into the gauze. We form it around the arm or the leg or the hand or the foot. And it sets quite quickly. Within a matter of a few minutes, it's set. And at that point, it's hard enough to cut off with a special tool, which we have been using. Plaster cast is cut in half, and then I will remove the two halves from the mold. I'll put the two halves back together again, just visually, and put a couple rubber bands around the mold to keep it together. I'm fortunate enough to have several assistants who I can then give the cast to, and they in turn will apply a similar gauze plaster and put the two pieces back together again. So what we have then is a shell of what was lost in that war, be it a foot, a leg, an arm. It's slightly abstract, but it's certainly recognizable as a limb, as a foot, as an arm, as a hand. I saw an article in the New York Times, and it included a photograph of an Iraqi on a hospital bed, if you want to call it that. But he had, as best I can figure, both legs amputated and an arm or a hand having been amputated. I started this project months ago, and when I saw that picture and I looked at the castings that we're doing, there was this eerie resemblance to this white plaster cast that was on what remained of his legs and what remained of his arm with what we're doing. And it shows, again, this is a universal issue, a universal loss that occurs in war.